Hey, everybody. It's good to have you here this evening. We are representing Provo City School District. I am Meredith Lamb. She'e Meredith Lamb Yenishes, Senjikininshek Izitlana Bashishchin. I just greeted you in the Dene or Navajo language. And in our culture, it is customary for us to introduce ourselves, and we come from a matriarchal society. So my mother's clan is my first clan, and my second clan is my paternal clan. So I just told you that I am from, because this is what we do, so we know who we're speaking to and who our relatives are. My first clan, which is my maternal clan, the clan that I was born for, is Senjikinen, which is the cliff dwelling clan. And then the second clan I said was Kizaflanet, and that is the Many Goats clan, and that's my father's clan. So your mother's clan is always your first clan, and then your father's clan is your second. This evening tonight, we are going to be hosting a wonderful event. We have 4 wonderful panelists with us tonight, and we are so grateful to have each and every one of them who have made just amazing efforts in the Native American community around the United States and around the world. So I myself am looking forward to hearing their stories and the questions that will be asked by our Diversity and Equity Director, Brian Yazzie. And so this evening tonight, I just wanted to do a couple of things. First off, I want to recognize that this month, the month of November, is National Native American Heritage Month. It is a month where we as Native peoples come together here in the United States, Native American and Alaska Native, and we celebrate our culture. We celebrate the heritage that we all come from, and the history and the resiliency of our people. And we celebrate the ancestry that we come from, because I think a lot of our strength as Native peoples comes from our ancestry and from the collective power that has come from them enduring so much. If you know a little bit about American Indian history, you know that that is a very difficult past, but our ancestors were strong. They were united. We are people of community. And just this evening, before we were able to start this, I was able to overhear some of the talking, and I really love the Native community, because this is what I miss being so far from home and being an urban Indian now, is that addressing of brother and sister. And I just hope you guys all know tonight that we are all in amazing, wonderful company. And all of these people that are on this panel are brothers and sisters in the Native community. And we treat each other as such, and we respect each other. Me being of, I guess, a younger generation, I would refer to these, ladies and gentlemen as my uncles and my aunties, and I treat them as such. And I just have so much amazing respect for each and every one of them. Also, I just want to also point out that today is Veterans Day. Let's not forget the amazing sacrifice that our veterans have performed on our behalf here in this country. A statistic that I like to share all day with people is, did you know that Native American people join the military 5 times the rate of the rest of the United States? So you have more Native American people who have served as active military in the United States prior to even them receiving U.S. citizenship, which happened in 1924. And so it is in the warrior spirit that I recognize and honor all of those veterans who have served. I have many family in my own line who have served military, Navy, Marines, Air Force, you name it. I think we all have people from different branches of military service who have served. And so we want to recognize that sacrifice, because the freedoms that they were able to give us and were able to pass down are freedoms that we should not take for granted. And so today is a day where I remind my children, I remind my students that let's do something good with that freedom that we have. It doesn't mean that we can just do whatever we want. We have to be very mindful about the good that we bring into this world. And as a Navajo woman, for me, I know it's very important for me to teach my children to walk in beauty. It's the Hojong way. It's the way that we are taught to live our life in a way where we spread that beauty around the world and have that peace within. And so thank you to all those veterans who have served for us in this country. We're so grateful for you. I'm just going to go ahead and start off by doing some introductions. I'm just going to kind of go down the flyer. I'm going to start with Dustin Jansen. Dusty, you want to raise your hand? Dusty is an enrolled member of the Navajo Nation. Dusty works as an assistant professor of American Indian Studies at Utah Valley University. He is serving currently as the director for the Utah Division of Indian Affairs, and so he works with the governor of Utah. We are very honored to have Dusty here with us this evening. For nearly 13 years, Dusty has served in judicial capacity for different tribal communities. And I actually was able to go to college with Dusty. And so I feel like, there's definitely a kinship and a personal tie there. And Dusty is actually very active in our Provo Parent Committee for our Title VI program. So it's good to have you tonight, Dusty. Next, I'm going to go ahead and proceed with Ken and Doreen Duncan. Can the Duncans raise their hands? Hi. You guys are going to hear so many wonderful things from this couple. Ken has served as the Native American consultant to the U.S. State Department of Defense on numerous foreign goodwill tours to the U.S. embassies and consulates in Central Asia, Eastern Europe, the Middle East, Central and South America. And Doreen, his beautiful wife, is currently the manager of the family business, which is Yellow Bird Productions. Under Doreen's management, they have been able to make appearances on The Tonight Show, the Billboard Music Awards Show, and the Summer Olympics in London, England. So we've got some celebrities here. I know some Duncans. I'm glad to have you guys here with us tonight. Moving on, we're going to head and introduce Jackie. Jackie, can you raise your hand? Jackie Cassine Pata is the president and CEO of the Tlingit and Haida Regional Housing Authority. And she's the CEO for a financial corporation in Juneau, Alaska. She has served for 18 years as the longest serving executive director of the National Congress of American Indian in Washington, D.C., an organization led in policy development for tribes with Congress and the administration. And so I think I've been able to actually attend some of those meetings, Jackie. I think when I was an intern in DC way back in, let's say, like 2003. That gives my age away. So, that's a wonderful organization. We are just honored to have you here with us tonight. And we'll go ahead and move on to Greg. Greg, can you raise your hand? It's so good to have you with us. Greg Mendoza brings more than 30 years of work experience in the areas of youth development, public policy, and tribal government. Greg is the immediate past governor of the Gila River Indian community and has served his local community as a community council representative representing the District 4 community. And Greg has done amazing work with Native communities, especially with Native youth. From what I understand. And so, Greg, you and I would definitely be able to talk because as a Title VI coordinator for Provo City School District, both of us, I'm sure, work with a lot of urban Native families. So my heart goes out to each and every one of these panelists that have been able to honor us with their presence tonight. And I'm looking forward to learning so much. And so I don't want to take up any more of your time. We're going to go ahead and we're going to start off with Ken. I believe you have a flute piece that the Native American flute piece you were going to play for us tonight. Is that right?
Yeah, I was decorating my trees outside.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm going to get my flute pretty soon.
No worries. We can wait here. But tonight, most of the questions are going to be directed and asked by Brian Yazzie. Brian, do you want to go ahead and maybe just do a quick introduction about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Meredith. So I'm Brian Yazzie. I'm Diversity and Equity Coordinator for the Provo City School District. And I'm a Navajo and Hopi from Northeast Arizona. And I got to meet and get to know these wonderful people through the work that I did prior to moving to Provo about 4 years ago, where I spent most of my career, a big number of my career, on the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community um, as the director of Native Services for the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Scottsdale. And we started two Boys and Girls Clubs in that community, and then a third one on the Wallapai tribe up in around in Peach Springs, which is just east of Kingman, Arizona. And that's where Greg and I got to meet, get to know each other through the Boys and Girls Club. But then I graduated. I was able to serve as the national director of Native Services for the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, and that's how I got to know Jackie with her work at the National Congress of American Indians. Now, backing up a little bit, the Duncans, they had a couple of their kids as members of our club. And as talented as they are, we actually utilized their talent. And we were the only club, and I think we're still the only Boys and Girls Club that had 3 kids selected for the national conference to perform at their convention. We had Kevin, who hoop danced. I think that was in Orlando, the Orlando conference. And then we had yeah, and then we had another group of kids that went to San Antonio that did a fancy dance and flute. And then we had our third club member did a fire dance. He was a Pacific Islander club member who did a fire dance, and which was amazing. So a little bit of bragging there. Like I said, it's been a while, but we still have the only club in all of Boys and Girls Clubs that have had 3 students perform at the national conference. So I'm pretty proud of that. So sharing culture has always been a big part of what we did. So anyway, it's great to have all of you, and thank you for joining us. Kenny, looks like you got your flute, so we'll turn it over to you.
Okay. I always look not for the sunset, but also always for the sunrise in all things. And so this is the sunrise song. Sunrise song.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kenny. I had to ask you to play your flute. I mean, I can listen to your music hours. It's beautiful. Thank you. So tonight we are going to be we're friends. We're as Meredith said, we're family, and that's the beauty of our culture. Family is the center point of who we are as Native people. That is the foundation. And so tonight, as we talk, we're going to, we might tease each other a little bit, and we might have some laughs, but we're also going to hopefully share some valuable information as far as kind of understanding who we are as Native people. So the first question I have for all of you that I want to start off with is how has culture impacted your life, not only your personal life but also professionally? So Kenny and Doreen, let's start off with you. How would you respond to that question?
Well, first of all, I wanted to let you know that I'm originally from the state of North Dakota. I represent 3 different tribes in North Dakota. I'm a Arikara, Hidatsa, and Mandan. And because today is Veterans Day, I felt it was important to honor and recognize our veterans and to let you know that for my family, my father was a veteran from World War II. And something interesting about my father's family is my father's family's name is Dancing Bull. But when the four brothers wanted to join the military, they were all told that they couldn't keep their native name. And as Native people, we were warrior societies, and so it was very important for Native people. As Meredith mentioned, there are a lot of Natives, throughout, before we even received our citizenship to the United States, who volunteered to be in the military. So my three uncles and my father, they had to give up their family name, the Dancing Bull name. So my father and his other brother, they took the name Myers. I have another uncle who took the last name Jackson. So it was so they were so honored to be, or they wanted to represent our Native people in the military, that they did that. They gave up their Native name. On my mother's side of the family, our family name is Yellowbird, and that's how we, because we are matrilineal societies, we are using my mother's name to recognize my mother, the matrilineal side of my family, in our naming our family business Yellowbird Productions. So we started out mainly as a Native dance group, and we kind of branched out in doing a lot of other types of presentations. So I'll go ahead and let Ken.
Okay. Well, I want to answer your question here. For me, I want to say thank you to all of you that are in education, because I went to school on the reservation until I had to go to high school. And when I went to high school, I had to go to a border town. And there was a lot of prejudice, discrimination in that school. And a lot of the kids, maybe a third of the students there were from the San Carlos Reservation. And there were a lot of Apaches that went there. Nonetheless, they were still exposed to a lot of discrimination, not from the kids, ironically, but from the administration. It was the administration that was like that. We got along with the kids. The whites, the Hispanic, were very well balanced with the Native population, but it was the administrators that wronged the students, wronged different programs that they had. And so we had 2 walkouts during my junior year. And so after that protest and the reservation school buses came to get us, I decided then that I wasn't going to go back to that school for my senior year, that I wasn't going to graduate from there. It left such a bad taste in my mouth that I went to an Indian art school in Santa Fe, New Mexico, the Institute of American Indian Arts. And when I got there, my gosh, it was like I walked through a rainbow. I met tribes that I had never even heard of before. I was in the midst of sculptors, painters, dancers, singers, jewelers. I was an artist too, but I always got in trouble for doodling in class, but now I was getting credit for doodling in class. And so for me, the administrators made all the difference. The people, the teachers there, the principal, everyone, all the instructors were so much into encouraging our ability to be artists. And that inspired me so much that from that point on, I can honestly say I never really was exposed or prone to running into racism. And I can pretty much say the same thing about my wife. She's been with me for a long time. I met her when we were 17 years old at that Indian boarding school in Santa Fe. And because that base from support from the administrators, inspiring all of us striving artists as young people in boarding school, that laid the base for my wife and I to be very firm in our cultural connection, our self-identity as Native people. And that poured right into our children. And so our children are very, very proud and strong, and they're very solid in who they are. They are the examples for those around them just because they do not allow people to overpower them. They have a self confidence that is just there. And I owe it all to people like you that are administrators that inspire and support us. And so kudos to all of you that are here this evening.
Thank you, Kenny, Doreen. Jackie, how's culture impacted you?
Thanks for the question. I listened to the Kenneth talking about identity, and I remember as a young woman, I wanted to be professional and smart and learn all of the things in business that I needed to learn. And it wasn't until but I was raised traditionally. My grandmother was very much part of my life. I assisted my clan leader with putting on a culture camp every year for the kids, and we went to fish camp. We lived subsistence lifestyle. I had all of those things, all those experiences, but I felt like I had to separate my life, my work life and my real life. And it wasn't until one day that I realized I had one of those aha moments that I realized that I don't have to live two separate lives, that they're both the same. And that's when I developed that confidence that I needed that was lacking, because my spirit and my identity connected together, and I was comfortable with who I was. And from that day forward, I have to say that the culture and my connection to my ancestors and my cultural values and my ways have been my guiding light. And no matter what business situation that I'm in or political decision that I have to be in, I know I can always go back to connecting back to that spirit of my culture, my clan, my people, and representing Indian country. And, it is that thing that fills your soul and makes you know that you're doing something good every day for the people that you're representing.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Greg, what are your thoughts? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm blessed to belong to three cultures. I'm of the Akamet Otham, referred to as the river people. I'm of the Thanaotham, which is referred to as the desert people. And I'm also of the Pascoyaqui tribes. And I'm enrolled in accordance with the federal government with the Gila River Indian community. My culture is my foundation. My family was a part of the relocation period. And I was raised in California for a good period of my life. But as my family moved back home to our ancestral lands here in Arizona, I've learned to cherish that culture is everything. Even in my work as a former tribal governor, leader, and as a youth advocate for Native young people, it's everything. Even today, I live in the city, I'm urban, as some would classify me as, but there's a lot of story. There's a story behind why there are a lot of natives that live within the urban community, and I know that's probably something that we'll discuss further. But for me, my culture is my foundation, and it guides me to everything I do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate that. Dustin?
I'll just echo what everyone else has said. Knowing who I was growing up is a big deal to me, and it always has been. I think just listening to Meredith introduce herself, and when we share our clans with people, we're sharing. We're putting ourselves out there that we're related, that we can get along, and with that relationship, we're going to treat each other better. As for me, doon and kintlachini nishna, biligana bashishchin, honagani dashachelo, biligana dashanella, akut aden nishna. Like Meredith said, we get clans from our mom, our dad, our grandparents. And at the end of that introduction, we say, that's what makes me Navajo. That's what makes me a human being. That's what makes me who I am. And, and being able to grow up on the Navajo reservation and just being able to have that exposed to me my whole life and the influence that it had on the decisions I made and, the career path I chose. We were always told that we needed to serve our people. And I tried to move away from that for a little bit, but I couldn't. I ended up finding myself in public service because that's where I find my joy. And I think as Native people, that's where we find our joy, serving people, serving others, and solidifying our relationships with each other.
Yeah. I appreciate those comments, Dustin. I think we all have similar feelings of when it comes to culture. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, it is who we are. I mean, that's our identity. We're a family, and that's the beauty, I think, of culture. I mean, I had the opportunity to travel across the country and visit a lot of different tribes, and those were the common things that I saw. Those similar attributes is that whether you're visiting the Snohomish tribe up in Washington or the Northern Cheyenne in Montana, I mean it's a family, and you're welcomed. And like I said, I spent 15 years on the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community, and I loved it out there. I had a few people say, you need to get your tribal, you need to become a member of the tribe. Because I lived out there for so long, but it's just wonderful, and it's just a great place to be able to visit so many people. Okay, so I want to go into some specific questions, and so Jackie, I'm going to start off with you with this one. So last week we had the general elections, and election time on the federal, state, and even local level, impacts us quite a bit with tribes, and you were right in the middle of all of that. You had to work with all major parties and because you never know who's gonna take over, the White House and things like that. So why is it so important to have that relationship with elected officials, and how do you cultivate that, as especially in your position, as the executive director of NCAI? I mean, how did you maneuver or just work with all of these different people with different perspectives?
I think it was really important for me to realize that no matter who was in office or who was elected, that tribal governments had to have a government to government relationship. And so I had to find a pathway for us to have a dialogue, to have a policy exchange, whether I like that person or not. It was critical to advance the government to government relationship and to not have the doors closed, and for tribal leaders to be at the table. And so it was easier for me it was never easy, let's just put it that way. You have a lot of politics, but it was really important for me that we demonstrate our political power as Native Americans. And so that's why we started the Native Vote efforts across the country and got people more engaged in the Republican and Democratic conventions, and really stepped up our visibility in getting out the vote, because we knew that politicians like one thing: they like people to vote for them, or they like campaign contributions. So we didn't always have the campaign contributions, but we certainly could let our voices be heard through our votes. And so for me, it was really critical to always find the when, and to be focused on, I may not, how you look at battles and wars. I want to win the longer term war, that sometimes the battles may be ones that we may win or not, but I can't get caught up in the riffraff if I need to be able to move forward as much as I possibly can. And there'd be some things that I just couldn't win, and I'd have to walk away from those and work on the things that I could.
Yeah.
I had this saying, and I always kept, and I still do it today: positive and progressive. How can I move forward with a positive perspective? Because that's how you create winning opportunities.
And yeah, that's awesome. And I would say with all the effort that has happened, let's say over the past couple of decades, I think that has led to where, we now have Native Americans in Congress. You know, because 20 years ago we didn't have that, but today we do. And
That
you
was
see,
part of Native Vote.
yeah,
That was
exactly.
we were training people how to actually run for office and encouraging people to run for office.
Yeah. So I just think it's wonderful to see that happen. And then there's more and more Native Americans that are running for office, not only federal but state and local um, as well. So that's great. Anybody else have any comments on that? I know Greg, you're really involved in that too.
Yes, and thank you, Jackie, for sharing that. And as you all know, this last general election was so important to Native country. And I have to shout out to my state, the state of Arizona, because we collectively made a difference in this election based on data that has been collected here in the state. Native tribes here in Arizona did make an impact in this election, and we're very proud of that. I believe some of the national networks, such as CNN and others, have credited Native tribes for getting the vote out. The effort, the outreach has been tremendous. And when we talk about tribal elections and how they impact tribal governments, decisions are made at all levels of government, and it does affect Native peoples and tribal governments. So again, our votes did ensure that these issues would be heard collectively. I believe we have made a difference. And Jackie knows that, tribes often come to Washington, D.C. Often. And I know as the former governor, I practically lived in Washington, D.C. and having to educate members of Congress on our legislative priorities. It was a constant battle of having to educate them about our priorities. And there's 500 plus tribes in the United States, and we're all different. We share some commonalities, but we're all there to support each other. So,
Yeah.
But yes, I'm looking forward to this new administration going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. So yeah, Dustin, do you have any comments? I know you probably were watching the state leadership changes as well.
Absolutely. I was watching the federal elections for sure, just because I think the older I get, the more interested I get in politics, and now that I have children in my house, the idea of how policies and laws will affect them when they get older, and that's really our job, is to make sure that it sounds cliche, but we have that responsibility to leave a better world and for our children. And we sometimes tend to think about that ecologically, environmentally, and that's true too. But we also have to leave a world that is set up legally and making sure that we have good legislative practice going on at all levels of government. And so I find myself really paying attention to things and talking to my kids more about the different stances on different issues in the world, and letting them know that their voice matters, and letting them know that there's a correct way to talk about things, there's a correct way to say things, and we can disagree, but we can still work together.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's been an exciting year. COVID aside, it's been an exciting year.
And I think the enthusiasm is what I love is seeing kind of the trend of empowerment happen, among all of our tribes. We like Greg, you said, we make an impact. We make an impact in the state and national level, and even locally. And I think that's what I enjoy seeing the most is just kind of seeing that empowerment take place, knowing that, hey, we do count and we are important in society, because I think sometimes we weren't even looked at in that way. And so thank you for your comment. So Dustin, I'm gonna go right back to you on this question, because I'm gonna lean on your legal background. So if you could explain a little bit on federal and state recognized tribes and tribal sovereignty. Tribal sovereignty is talked a lot, and people try to understand what that is. So if you can kind of give us a simple explanation of why is it so important.
We'll give that 2-minute answer on sovereignty. No, sovereignty. I teach political science at Utah Valley University, and sometimes the textbook definition is just having the final say. But it's more than that. Sovereignty is the ability to have a government-to-government relationship. It's that ability to create partnerships with other sovereigns. I meet Native people all the time that will tell me that Native tribes are not sovereign. They're not really sovereign, but I will go to war with you if you say that to me. No, I'm just kidding. When the colonists first got to these shores, to this great country, they decided to make treaties with the people they met. And you don't make treaties with races of people. You make treaties with political entities. You make treaties with governments. And if you go back to the decision we just saw in Oklahoma in the McGirt case, that was so important, that treaty between the Cree, the Muskogee, and all those tribes, and that ended up in Oklahoma, because those were one of the first treaties that our country participated in as a new United States. That was something that helped the United States exercise its sovereignty on the international scale. It showed the world that it could act as a sovereign in this land. And so I was very happy that the Supreme Court was able to uphold that and show that two sovereigns, that treaty relationship is something that can stand, and to support the legal reality that treaties are the supreme law of the land, right up there with the U.S. Constitution. Now, where did tribes get the ability to make these treaties? They've always had it. The tribal sovereignty predates the drafting of the U.S. Constitution. It had to have. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to make any of these treaties. Our governments existed prior. Maybe we didn't use the word government. Maybe our definitions were different. But we certainly are a political entity by definition today, and we've always exercised that. So I guess in the difference between state recognized tribes and federally recognized tribes, there are 574 federally recognized tribes in the U.S. today, and that means they have a special relationship with the federal government, these different tribes. Now, there are a number of tribes in the United States that are not federally recognized, where the federal government does not recognize them as a political entity, but they are within states, and the state governments themselves recognize these tribes as important and as political entities. One of the largest state recognized tribes you'll hear about is probably the Lumbees in North Carolina, and they have a working relationship with the state of North Carolina, and they have a government to government relationship. Their two governments communicate together. They create legislation together. They collaborate together. They consult with each other, and so that. I wouldn't take anything away from state recognized tribes. I think any level of sovereignty that you can exercise is important, and that's my short answer.
Hey,
but I'll stop there.
You did a great job. Thank you, Jackie, Greg, or anybody want to add to any of that? I think Dustin.
Yeah, I'll share some insight there. As you know, it all boils down to funding. When we talk about state tribal recognition versus that of a federally recognized tribe, it boils down to the guarantee of funding. And again, the federal recognition remains the primary way in which tribes receive that recognition. And it's sad when you think about we as an indigenous peoples of this country that we have to get recognized. It's sad. It's a sad commentary of the things, but especially now as we begin to educate people about Native American heritage, month, that we have to get recognized, in order to get funding, when these funding should be guaranteed to us regardless. But again, that's just my own thinking. And then when we talk about tribal sovereignty, of course, it's about us being able to govern ourselves, and give us that authority to regulate our own. So as a tribal leader, that's important to us, to maintain that tribal sovereignty, particularly when we go to Washington, D.C. every year. And like I said, I was often there all the time, and it was just having to, and it's a sad commentary when our own members of Congress don't understand tribal governments. Yeah. Even today, some of them are not educated about the treaties, about what even tribal sovereignty is, And so we as tribal leaders go to DC through NCAI, through their meetings and their impact week activities. We're having to constantly go and walk the halls of Congress to educate members. They should know this, but these are just some of my thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
I just want to add one really quick thing because I think it's important given what both of them said. Our sovereignty is inherent and it's recognized in the Constitution. Yes. And so the whole process of getting federal recognition, I don't want us to get caught up in that. We have inherent sovereignty, and we need to remember that we're recognized through the Constitution, and that's the basis of our governmental systems, the U.S. governmental systems. Yeah. We were already here in place. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie.
Can I just say something about that too? On an international basis, my wife and I are goodwill ambassadors for the State Department for the past 17 years. We've gone to about 61 countries representing actually the country of the U.S., not as Native ambassadors, but as American ambassadors. But they used our culture to break barriers. In Bolivia, the president there, who was indigenous, ejected the American ambassador, and Chargé was in charge, second in command, for years. And they didn't let any American diplomats into the presidential grounds at all. When we arrived, the armored vehicles blocked the gates to the palace. Not until they told the guards that we were indigenous people from America did they open the gates, and they notified the president of Bolivia that his brothers and sisters from America were coming to answer their call when he said, "I welcome any indigenous brothers and sisters into my land." And so we actually were able to have an audience with all of the administration over there in Bolivia. And so what I'm saying is our culture goes a long ways internationally. We are accepted where other Americans are not accepted because of this political view, because of this passage of this law that affects those countries. When we were in Austria, when our bus pulled up to a tourist site, to the Habsburg's palace, the people that were selling food and souvenirs asked the bus driver who we were. He said Americans, and they started carting their goods away. But when we came out and they saw we're indigenous, they brought their carts back and they apologized and said, "We didn't know you were our indigenous brothers and sisters." And they gave us free soda and snacks and free souvenirs, just the opposite. So our culture is very much supported internationally. And it's very sad, as these two gentlemen said, this is the only country where we are actually discriminated against in our own lands, where our ancestors are buried in this very land here. And so for us to be the only ones to be asked to identify ourselves with a card saying that we are indigenous when no other race of people here have to be a card carrying American, that's very sad. But as a culture, people look to us internationally. When we are asked to go on tour as goodwill ambassadors, the next morning when we arrive, they have a media blitz. And all the questions you are asking right now is what different countries ask us. The internet, the radio, the newsprint, the TV stations, they all are asking us questions about America. Maybe Greg will remember that law about immigration with the Mexicans, SP something.
1040.
They were very well aware of the atrocities that were put upon Americans and Mexican people that were trying to get a fresh start here. They were so well versed that we were taken aback. When we were in Venezuela, we were pressed really, really hard because they said, why are you supporting the governor of Arizona when he does all these things to indigenous people? And we had to think really fast. And the good thing I was a really good dancer. I was able to dance around all these hard questions. But our culture speaks really loud internationally is what I'm saying. We should be proud that our ancestors made themselves so much aware internationally that we are very respected throughout all the countries throughout the world.
Thank you, Kenny, Dorian, for that. Very, very, very powerful. Appreciate you sharing that. So, Greg, I'm gonna come to you with this question. Kind of use your experience as a governor. So, you're involved in a lot of different things. Even though you're not, the governor of Gila River, you're still involved with the community, the people, your youth issues. You care about youth issues, education, health. What's life like right now, do you think, on the reservation? I mean, Gila River, what I'm so impressed with Gila River and Salt River, I'll use those two for example. They have a lot of different businesses going on. They provide a lot of opportunities for their community members, jobs and other resources, schools, their healthcare and all those things. I mean, what kind of maybe help people kind of just visualize a little bit of, what's life like living on the reservation these days?
Thank you, Brian, for that question. Our community is blessed in so many ways. And when I became the governor, as a matter of fact, I was elected as the youngest governor of my community. I came in, of course, with any tribal administration, you inherited a lot of issues, a lot of challenges. And Gila River had the infrastructure in place already as I came into office. And as I said, we are truly blessed with the location, with the market of the Phoenix metropolitan area that helped us in our ways. And I think the challenges that we faced at Gila River was the lack of the language, the culture, because a lot of our tribal members were influenced outside of the community, since the Phoenix metropolitan area bordered our community to the north. But we maintained it. As a result of my administration, of course, education was my priority, and to change the mindset of our community to begin to help our young people was a very an important issue of mine. And it's always been a passion. And I think Jackie knows and the Duncans know that my passion has always been about the young people. That's where my journey began, was with them before I decided to delve into politics for 9 years. But I've come full circle now, and I'm currently working for a national Native American youth organization today. And that's where my passion relies. But Gila River had these systems in place. We had a very a sound economic development infrastructure, of course. We had casinos, hotels, golf courses. We had an industrial development corporation that housed over 40 industrial development businesses that bordered our community. We had a very progressive farm business in our community. So we had all of this in place. My job as the governor was just to make sure that operations were fully managed. And of course, working with the tribal government is not always an easy task. You know, when you have 7 political ideologies trying to understand what you're trying to do, you know, it's always a challenge. But as a governor, you have to work with them and work with your tribal leadership, the council members, and with the tribal administration. You know, Gila River had over 80 departments and offices and programs that served the community of over 21,000 plus community members. My workforce was like about 2,100 employees that served my administration. So I was very blessed to have a good management staff to help me in that effort. It's not always easy to work with an administration that big and to serve the community. But, you know, again, as I stated, you know, I just had staff that helped advise me, particularly about some of the challenges facing the community. Of course, the water issue is a big issue within my community. We're very blessed that back in 2004, President Bush signed into law the largest water settlement in the history of the United States. And so we have a water settlement, and now we're working on the delivery of that water system as we speak. You know, so water is everything. It's the namesake to our culture, to our community called Gila River Indian Community. So that river, we're working through that. That's the river and the water is very significant to our community. It's often referred to as our bloodline to who we are as Gila River Piedmont Maricopa Indians. So again, just enjoying that time in my life. But as you know, Brian, I now work for a national Native American organization serving youth in 36 different states. So thank you.
Yeah, and I know you're very passionate about youth. You know,
Yeah.
Unity is an amazing program or organization.
Yes.
So thank you. So I want to kind of move along here because, you know, 1 hour flies by really fast. So Ken and Doreen, I wanted to kind of, I wanted this particular question to be with you because, you know, as ambassadors in your experience, there's a lot of misconceptions about Native people out there. And, you know, you kind of mentioned a little bit about, you know, the questions that are, you know, you've heard some of these questions before, but, and this is maybe kind of to everybody. What are some like misconceptions that are out there that people just don't realize? And I'll share one real quickly. One of the things that I think sometimes as educators, when we talk about history, we'll use the phrase or just kind of use Native people in a past tense. And you know, and when it's used in the past tense to a young person that is learning, you know, and I experienced this when I was visiting a Boys and Girls Club in Atlanta. I met with a group of middle school teenagers, and we were talking about just life living in inner city Atlanta, and I shared with them about myself and my culture, and they were like, "Oh, I thought there wasn't Indians anymore." And so when we start talking more, they want to know, well, what's it like riding a horse, and or what's it like to, you know, live in a teepee and all of those things. So it's interesting what is being taught, but I guess the usage of past tense or when Native Americans were here in this area, you know, that kind of bothers me a little bit. So I just want to what are some of the common misconceptions that are out there that we need to kind of maybe help people understand that, you know, it's not that way?
Well, for me, I think it's what you mentioned in the fact that there are so many different tribes, over 500 different tribes, and we have really unique and rich cultures. You mentioned the teepee, and all natives do not live in teepees. And there's hogans, there's wikiups, there's all different types of traditional homes. We have a different regalia, different dance regalia. We have a lot of different languages. Even just in our state of Arizona, there are over 20 different tribes, and we have different backgrounds. So I think what you just mentioned, that is important, that we're not all just, we don't speak Indian. We speak Navajo, or we speak many different languages. So I think that's really important, that people know that there's such a wide variety and that we still exist. That's important. A lot of people, what you just said, people have said to us, "Are you a real Indian?
Yeah.
Are you real? Like we're from the past, or fantasy, or whatever." But we're real. That I think that's what I would say is a misconception.
Yeah. When I was in Kyrgyzstan, there's times when I don't take my wife because it's a little bit too dangerous, and so my wife didn't go with me, but I took some other people with me, and different tribes. And when we got there, they gave all Native American tribes the name Apache. So to them, every tribe, every indigenous person in America, they refer to as Apaches, which I had no problem with. But the other people that were in my group, they had a problem with that. They kept saying they were this tribe. They when they grouped us, they kept saying Apaches, and so that was their misconception. But they believed that we were their long lost relatives, and they were very akin to finding us, and they welcome us in their homes, long lost relatives that returned. And so there's a lot of misconceptions. I was flipping through the channels, and there was a very famous TV series that all German people know. There's an Apache chief called Winnetou, and it's from a book like Mark Twain. It's like their Tom Sawyer, their Huck Finn, a very prolific figure in their German literature. And he's an Apache chief, but he dresses like a Plains Indian. He lives in a teepee, and they were supposed to be speaking Apache, but they weren't speaking Apache at all. I don't know what they were speaking, but whenever I go to Germany, people really ask me a lot of questions, and they just have the complete different idea. And so, yeah, we do a lot of educating internationally. We try to do our best. I'm a fool about Apache, by the way. I have to follow the steps of my Diné relatives here. Chico Ken Duncan would say, "Zilwanshli, not Osenshli, Sevenstebanshti." So that is my clan. And again, we're matrilineal. So I am actually from the White Mountain people, but my relatives a long time ago moved to San Carlos. And San Carlos was one of those rare tribes that was very unique of all the tribes. It used to be part of the White Mountain tribe, but it became a POW camp. So all of the people that were considered renegades, radicals, were moved to San Carlos. And that's where I come from. But I'm very proud of who I am. There are a lot of people that, it's funny, the American people are just as confused as the Germans, Italians, the Uzbeks, the Peruvians, all of these people. And it's funny, I see no difference in clarity in what they understand. The Americans need to be as educated about Native culture as the different people from different countries.
Thank you, Kenny. So we're coming up to our time, but I want to get on this one particular subject. So we're going to go over a little bit. So I hope everybody doesn't mind. but I wanted to bring this up because I think it's an important subject. I want to get on the mascots because that's kind of a national issue. And Jackie, I know you were really involved in that at NCAI. Can you just touch base on the whole mascot? Why is that? Why was so much effort put into that? And if you could kind of share a little bit of your feelings on that issue.
Sure. I think one of the, as we said earlier, I think part of all of us brought this up over and over again. And by the way, I'm also matrilineal from the Ravens Sockeye clan. But all of us said identity is critically important to us as Native American. And when we do surveys of our youth, it's the number one thing they care about is identity and connection to culture. When your identity is being shared in a derogatory way or being misrepresented or denigrated, all of those things affect how you feel about yourself. When you look at the era in this country where a number of these Native American sports names came up, it wasn't a time in this country when we were proud of we were honoring our relationships with tribes. It was in the time of this country when we were terminating tribes by federal action, that we were assimilating, we were doing forced relocation, all other kinds of things, is when these Native sports teams' names rose to the forefront. So these claims that we're honoring, are not justified. Now, today, I'll have to say there are a lot of well-meaning persons out there, and many people are having conversations about how to address those. And I would say team after team is changing their name because of this respect of who we are, respecting of all people. And sometimes even a well-meaning name in a well-meaning community may not, sometimes it's maybe warriors or something that's not as bad as names like perhaps the Washington team name. The Washington formal football team name. But sometimes it leads to actions by fans, war hoops, wearing feathers, other cultural kinds of things in ways that are not respectful in the way that our culture honors them. We have a lot of respect about how we wear when we do put paint on our face, the significance of that, or when we wear a feather in our hair and the significance of that. And so what I would say is, as our ancestors have all taught us, respect all things in front of our face, respect all things. And that's what we're asking. Respect our youth, honor their culture and where they come from. Don't make them live in an environment where, they feel dehumanized by the caricatures that represent them through sports teams.
Thank you, Jackie. Appreciate that. Anybody else want to share any feelings on that?
Just to echo, what Jackie said, I believe this arose during the allotment period. And, being an advocate for young people, I have to agree with what Jackie said, the exposure to mascots and other stereotypes of Native Americans has a negative impact with our young people. There has been many studies that have cited that such mascots remind American Indians of the limited ways others see them, and in this way constrains how they see themselves. So, So mascots, symbols, images, citing the harmful effects of racial stereotyping on the social identity and self-esteem of American Indian youth has been cited as being very harmful. And so I'm so happy that we're finally making some strides with some of these teams that have decided to take action. I believe the Washington changed their name now. Brian, what is that name now? What's that team called?
They're still Washington. They don't have a mascot yet.
Yeah.
Okay. But again, through the efforts of Jackie and the National Congress of American Indians and others that have supported this effort, it became a national movement in Indian country. So again, when it comes to these issues like this, we come together. And again, this was a long battle for us, and there's still a lot that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And also, I want to mention reclaiming our names of our sacred places. So, taking names in like Squaw Peak to Piestico Peak, but also reclaiming our traditional names is very much a part of us rekindling our connection to our lands, our culture, and our language. You're seeing that across the country.
Thanks. Thank you for bringing that up, Jackie. Wow. This has been a lot, and we could probably go on and on and on. Unfortunately, we're kind of coming to the end of our evening, but I wanted to just give you all of you about a minute, just to kind of share kind of whatever you're thinking right now to folks that are listening. Just what do you want people to know that just the impact of being a Native American that you like to kind of share in a 1 minute time frame?
Well, for
Kenny?
me, I'd like to say to all of the parents, guardians, uncles, aunties, grandparents that are out there within the four walls of our youth, be a good example, because you're always teaching, whether you teach right or wrong. Those little eyes, those young teenagers, they're learning by your example. Whether it's good or bad, you're setting the example for them. So always be aware of what you need and want your children, your nieces and nephews, your grandchildren to learn. Always try to be honorable, try to do the best you can to be the best example for the youth. They are our future, and for my wife and I, we've tried our very best to try to instill in our children, our grandchildren, to be really proud of who they are. And now we're so happy and proud to say that even our grandchildren are now leaders within their communities. And so what you plant is what you sow in the end. So do your best to try to make them to be proud of who they are as Indigenous youth, as Native youth.
Thank you so much, Kenny. Doreen, it was wonderful having you this evening. Jackie?
Sure. I'd like to say that everybody makes a difference. I know you hear that, but my clan leader, he was a man highly educated in the skills of our clan and our traditions, but didn't really make it past, grade school. But he went to our schools and he offered himself up to teach culture in the classrooms. Because of his willingness and action to recognize that, today we have language immersion in our public schools. Our teachers are learning Tlingit. We have university classes to teach, our Indigenous teachers so that they can teach in our school systems. It goes on and on. So every time you have a place or a chance or an opportunity, embrace the culture and embrace the people that live around you and honor them. And our children will feel like, and they will know that they are respected and they have the same ability to learn and to be part of the education system.
Thank you, Jackie. Greg?
Yes, as we celebrate Native American Heritage Month, take time to learn about the indigenous histories of where you live. Like where I live in Phoenix and the surrounding areas is the homelands of my ancestors, the Huagam, those who have gone. Learn about the lives of Native populations through an indigenous lens. And lastly, learn about the inequalities that still exist within indigenous communities. As a former governor of my tribe, I often invited leaders to come visit my community. I brought in House Speaker John Boehner so that he can experience and see the problems of my community. That's the only way they're going to learn. We go to DC all the time spending our money, but I often call them to come to visit us as opposed to us visiting them. They have a responsibility to serve us. So I'll leave it with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate that. Dustin?
I just want to say thank you to everyone that was on the panel. I've seen your names everywhere, but I'm glad I was able to hear your words and see you face to face. And I appreciate the work that you're doing in the communities that you serve. And I think on my mind on that and along that same path is that I would ask people to be thankful for their parents. Be thankful for your grandparents. Someone asked me, it doesn't really look like the Native people got a fair shake in our American history. And my response was, it could have been worse, And if it wasn't for our relatives fighting, if it wasn't for our ancestors fighting and doing all that they could to preserve what we have today, things would be a lot different. So maybe some tribes have lost their language. Maybe some tribes have lost a lot of their beliefs, but they have what they have because of the fight that was put forward by their ancestors. So I hope we can be thankful for those that came before us, and I hope we can be thankful for our tribal leaders today, that whether they're serving in state, federal, or tribal governments, that they're willing to step forward and willing to take the criticism, but willing to involve themselves in the issues of their people to try to make things better. So I hope we can be thankful for that. And for our children, I would just say, do everything you can to stay strong spiritually, to stay strong emotionally, and to stay strong physically. Take care of yourself. Do everything you can to keep yourself strong. It's a rough world out there, but it's a happy world if we're prepared and ready to meet it. And so, again, thank all of you for sharing your words. And Brian and Meredith, thank you for allowing me to be on this panel.
Thank you, Dustin. I appreciate that. So in closing, I want to share with you just my thoughts real quick. So there's a place in southern Utah that is just outside of Blanding. There's a lake right before you get into Blanding, and you pass this lake, and it's a really steep hill. You go to the very top, and when you get to the top, on a clear day, you can see miles and miles and miles in front of you. And what I see to my left is Shiprock, the rock. And to my right, I see Monument Valley. And in front, I see the beautiful plateaus of the desert that we have. That's home. I love when I get to see that. It brings such a peaceful feeling in me because I know that I'm home. I was raised to respect my culture, respect my ancestors, and I'm grateful that I had those teachings because it has given me the foundation. It's given me the ability to do the work that I've done my whole career, and I still love it. And I want to do more, but it's all about just understanding and having that peace. And I'm grateful for my ancestors, grateful for their sacrifices, and because their sacrifices gave me to what I have today. And it's the same thing that I'm teaching my kids and my grandkids. And so it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing to be a part of, is being a Native American. So thank you. It was really, I wish that I could see you all the time. I miss my relationship with all of you and seeing you. And Greg, when I come to the Valley, I want to definitely meet up with you and have lunch. Kenny, Doreen, same thing. I miss you guys. Jackie, maybe
You guys come all up to Alaska.
Yes, someday I'll get up to Alaska. I know my wife and I would love to get up there. And of course, Dustin, we get to see each other quite a bit, so it's always good. It's just wonderful to see all of you. I mean, that's what's so beautiful about it is we're family, and that's what it's all about. And so, Meredith, thank you so much for all the work that you do with our school district and our Title VI program. You're doing an amazing
It's an
job.
honor. It really is an honor. There really is no greater, I feel so honored and blessed to be in the job that I am just because, as Native women, a lot of our role is to educate, right? And I think to be able to do that there's no greater honor than being able to do that. So thank you everyone for coming and just participating. You're all incredible.
So I want to thank everybody that joined us this evening. I hope you are taking away some valuable information. Thank you so much for your support. So we will have another speaker series event that will be at the latter part of January, early February. So we'll make that announcement probably at the beginning of next year on the dates and times, and as well as the next guest. So again, thank you so much this evening, and we will see you again.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.